All right, I'm back after yesterday receiving this lens. This is the Nikon 500mm f5.6 PF. And it's very small and very light, and I was excited to get it out into the field today. So I'm going to talk about this lens and my experience so far with it after having owned it for one day. So, disclaimer, this isn't like a lab review where I'm going to give you charts and graphs and studio setup situations with perfect lighting and perfect conditions and all that stuff. I'm not doing that because that's not how I shoot. I shoot outside in totally variable conditions, generally handheld with this type of a lens, shooting wildlife. And so that's kind of the way I want to test it as well, in the way I like to use it. So studio results don't matter to me because I don't shoot in a studio. So if you're looking for studio type results and lab tests, go ahead and click the thumbs up button before you leave and then go track down a different video, because that's not what this one is going to be about. So as I mentioned, I've only had this lens for one day, so I took it out and shot it this morning for about 5 hours. Came home, edited the photos. Now I'm making the video, and then I got to edit that video together, so it's going to be a long night trying to get this thing all pieced together so I can get it out to you guys as quickly as I can. I'll do a quick kind of summary. The bottom line so far is that the lens has exceptionally good image quality, super sharp at all apertures, f5.6. It's crazy sharp. I would say it's the sharpest lens I own. I would say it's comparable to Nikon's newest version, the 70-200 f2.8. They're both just fantastic. Anyway, so image quality is excellent. It's smaller and lighter than I had hoped. It's a joy to carry around. I'm not going to hesitate at all to take this out hiking. That's exactly what I got it for, was for being able to move around and having a lightweight, small, long lens to bring out in the field with me. There are two quick things I'll mention that are potential downsides. One is this phase Fresnel. I think that's how you pronounce it. Fresnel. It looks like Fresnel, but I think it's Fresnel. If it isn't, you can give me a hard time. Or not. It'd be better if you didn't, but whatever. Anyway, this phase Fresnel element, people say it has potential to give you some weird flare when you're shooting into direct light. I tried today to get something weird to happen with some flare, and of course I can get flare, but I don't see anything more unusual than other flare. The other potential thing that I need to spend more time with here is a possible inconsistency with VR, and I need to work on it a little bit more, because I did notice at some kind of slow to mid-range shutter speeds, not as perfectly consistent results with sharpness and the VR system, it's especially in comparison with this lens, the 200-500, which has exceptionally good vibration reduction system in it. I did notice I was not able to get as consistently good sharpness with this lens versus this in certain situations and certain slow-ish shutter speed. So I need to work on that some more, and I'll have to get back to you. But overall, excellent image quality, and had pretty repeatable results. Looks really good. So with that, let's get on to the video of diving into it just a little bit more, and just mention again the size and weight compared to this at 500 millimeters and that at 500 millimeters. This weighs significantly less. I'll link to my video below from yesterday where I do a more in-detail comparison. of the size. This thing weighs the same as my 70 to 200. That's the main reason I want it, is to get out in the woods and hike and have something small and light that I can cruise around and be mobile with, and be able to handhold running around the woods, so I don't have to carry a tripod and a big heavy lens. It makes a big difference for me to be able to be mobile and go look for critters out there in the woods. So today, as I mentioned, I got up for sunrise and I went out just to test this lens. So it was a little bit weird going out into the day and just knowing I'm going to shoot at 500 millimeters, and that's it. So all I did is I had this lens on, and then I had this lens on and only shot it at 500 millimeters to do some comparisons with image quality and lens flare and VR and some of those kind of things, because I think a lot of people have this 200 to 500 millimeter lens, so they have some perspective on its performance that I can compare this one to. So I went out today and said, I'm not even going to put on any other lens. I'm just going to shoot at 500 millimeters today, and whatever I find, that's what I'm going to shoot. So whether that's wildlife or landscapes or just random stuff, people, whatever, I'm just going to shoot at 500 millimeters today. And that's what I did. And it was an interesting kind of experiment. I don't think I made any really great images today, but I made some images and I had a good time doing that. Let's go ahead and look at some of the images that I made today. And I'll kind of talk through some of the things about those images that I think are important to look at. So first thing this morning, I shot the sun looking straight as it was just coming up over the mountains. There was a little bit of forest fire haze in the air, and I was able to shoot straight into the sun with this lens and with the 200 to 500. I was, again, trying to see what that would look like with the potential for weird lens flare. All lenses have some kind of flare when you're shooting straight into the sun, at least every lens I've used. And so I was expecting some lens flare, and I think, I got a little bit of lens flare there. Certainly nothing that ruins the image or looks out of the ordinary compared. And you can see right here the image with the 200 to 500 millimeter lens. Again, it has a little bit of lens flare as well. I don't know. They're very similar. I don't know if you could tell one being worse or better than the other. Another little kind of quick test I did between the two lenses was just kind of a background blur out bokeh test. I just shot the tip of a little tree, and so that was kind of two little tests in one shoot there, where to get the sharpness of the pine needles on this tree and then see how the background blurs out the difference between the two lenses, and just kind of see the quality of that bokeh on a far away background. Next, I moved on to a old forest fire burned tree, and there was some really nice texture in that old charred wood, and I shot that at minimum focus distance. I wanted to test it out on minimum focus distance, which is about 10 feet on this lens, so that feels pretty close to me on a 500 millimeter lens. So get 10 feet away from the subject, focus on it, and shoot it. And this is where I started to notice just a little bit of that inconsistency with sharpness in the vibration reduction system not working as consistently as what I'm used to on that 200 to 500. So I need to play with that a little bit more and try and figure out what's going on there. It concerns me a little bit, but I think I'll be able to figure it out. I'll keep you posted what I come up with on that one. But I was totally able to get nice sharp images, but they weren't all just as crisp as I kind of expected them all to be. It would miss once in a while and give a little bit of motion blur in there where I wasn't expecting. Keep in mind here at 10 feet, depth of field is like that much. It's like 5 millimeters, 7 millimeters, something like that. So it's a very small, shallow depth of field. So shooting a tree that's curved, you know, it's not everything's going to fall off very quickly into a blur. So there's a very small plane of focus in these images, and that's not what I'm seeing. Is that the blur out? What I'm seeing is some motion blur, and hopefully I can figure out a way to mitigate that or make it go away completely with something I'm doing wrong. I don't know exactly what that's all about. I shot a long distance landscape with the smoke in the trees and the valleys of the mountains in here, and it's a really pretty image, and I like the image. Right here I focused on these two trees in the lower part of the frame. Shot this at f5.6, so those trees are, I don't know how far away, hundreds of yards away, and I was just curious to see how sharp those trees would be at f5.6 handheld, and they are wicked sharp and beautiful, and then it falls off into a nice pleasing out of focus with the hills and the smoke behind. So I actually like that image. I think it's very pretty, but the test there was long distance focus at f5.6, and it worked out just beautifully. Let's see. Oh, there's another one of this burnt out tree in a little different light. This was on the shady side of a burnt tree. I actually really like this image too. I like the texture and the tones and the patterns in this burnt out tree. I think it's really pretty. Again, demonstrating, and I zoom in on at 1:1 here, it's very sharp, and this is again at minimum focus distance, wide open, f5.6. Found an elk crossing the Snake River. By this time it had heated up a little bit in the daytime, and we're getting some that heat diffraction, that heat distortion that kind of ruins a lot of images. And so this elk was long ways away, hundreds of yards away, shooting this handheld, and definitely there's some heat distortion in there when you zoom in on this 1:1. You can see that with the weird busy bokeh in the background and also in the foreground out of focus areas, but I think the lens did a pretty good job still of getting the elk nice and sharp in a really difficult situation there. Found a pair of eagles, again a long ways away on the other side of the river, sitting there in pretty bright light, their white heads lit up, and again another opportunity to test the lens at long distance. So shot this wide open at f5.6, and then this also gave me an opportunity to put on the TC14-3 teleconverter, the newest version of the 1.4 teleconverter. So that got us to 700 millimeters and f8, and I wanted to shoot these eagles and have a nice reference of here's just the lens, and here's the same scene with the teleconverter. And so again, beautifully sharp with just the lens. And then the next photo there is one of the eagles flew off, of course, right while I was switching and putting the teleconverter on. One of the eagles flew off, so it left the other one just sitting there, but luckily it was there long enough for me to again make some handheld photos. 700 millimeters wide open f8, and I don't see any degradation in image quality there. It looks excellent. Again, a very difficult situation, a long ways away from that bird, and I think it did a really excellent job. And here was another one. While I had the teleconverter on, I just took a picture. There was a leaf sitting there, and so I just wanted to see how much detail it would pick up in that leaf. So again, just handheld, pointed at that leaf, fire off a few frames, and this is what I got in there. Is really excellent detail in that leaf. You can see all those little patterns in the leaf, and again, that is 700 millimeters wide open at f8 handheld. So I think that works out really nice. So this was just an old building that as I was driving by, I saw an opportunity for a nice flat plane of something that had a bunch of detail and texture in that wood, those shingles. And so I shot it. I mostly wanted to shoot that with this lens, the 500 PF, and also then the 200 to 500 at 500 millimeters wide open, and get a good idea of image quality, basically just sharpness and detail that each of these will resolve, and then have a nice image I can compare like right next to each other that are basically the same image. They're handheld, taken from the same spot at the same focal length, you know, same aperture. I think the 500 is better for sure than the 200 to 500 at 500 millimeters. This one is certainly acceptable for my needs, and my needs are, I think, pretty demanding, to be honest. I'm regularly printing photos that are 60 inches wide or something, so I'm not just posting stuff online and on Instagram where you can get away with terrible image quality and it still looks good, very small. I'm printing big, where any little error or any little kind of anomaly is going to be magnified and it's going to show up. So this was certainly acceptable. This is noticeably more detail in that photo. Hopefully you can distinguish that, because it's subtle, and I'm not sure if that's going to show up in a YouTube video with the video compression and the low resolution. I'll do my best to present that to you in a way that works, but if it doesn't, you'll just have to trust me. Trust me. I took the little foot off, the tripod foot, and I like this about some of the Nikon lenses. When you do this, there's still a little screw hole there that I can screw in my Black Rapid strap straight onto there, and then I can take that foot off, and that extra weight and that extra just complexity goes away, and I can screw it directly into there, so I don't have to have that foot on here all the time. So I really like that feature for using that Black Rapid strap that just screws right in there. The lens hood is plastic. It's decent quality, you know, plastic, whatever. It does have this little snap-on thing here, so once it locks in, once it clicks into place, it's going to stay there. Click. So once it clicks in, it won't go anywhere until I push that. So let's talk about autofocus real quick. It seems very fast. I wasn't able to test it tracking any fast-moving critters today. I just couldn't find anything. No owls, and the birds weren't really cooperating with flying. So I wasn't able to really track anything. Given the 300 PF's autofocus tracking is excellent, and just kind of having a feel for how fast something can snap into focus with all the different lenses that I have, I can tell you that this one is very fast. And I did shoot a little bit of video footage of that, that shows where I rack it to minimum focus distance and then hit the AF on button. You can watch it rack all the way out to infinity and back, and you can see how fast it's moving to infinity and back. So that's like worst case scenario, going from minimum focus to infinity, and it snaps in there pretty quick. I will cut in a number of frames. I think I'll be able to even tell you how many frames it took, and then back out at 30 frames per second, exactly how many seconds it took to go between that, and a nice little comparison between this and the 200 to 500 and also the 600 f4. So that's as good as I could do on autofocus speed testing for you today. I have no doubt that it's going to track the owls much better than the 200 to 500. I would expect it to track them at least as well as the 300 f4, which was plenty good for me, and I would expect that to be plenty good for most subjects, because owls are a pretty demanding subject. Okay, so we'll rack this down to minimum focus distance, and then I'm going to hit the AF on button, point it at the sky, and that bounced back and forth a couple of times. Hopefully you could see how fast that went. I'll do it again. This is on a D850. Similar test here. This is with the 200 to 500 at 500 millimeters. Rack it all the way to minimum focus distance and then hit the AF on button. Got to see that bounce back and forth a couple of times. We'll do it again. Okay, that should give you that idea. All right, and here we are with the 600 f4 minimum focus, and hit the AF on button. Okay, let's do it again. Okay. Okay, so that little quick test maybe demonstrated autofocus speed. I think it definitely shows how fast the lens is able to move those focusing elements around in the lens, and noticeably faster. The 500 PF, way faster than the 200 to 500. I'd say it might even be faster than the 600 f4, the way it was moving those elements around. And that 600 f4 is plenty fast autofocus for my needs, and I think that's a pretty demanding need with owls stopping and starting and taking off and being able to track those things as they have really erratic flight. So all indications so far that autofocus is going to be lightning fast on this thing as well. Definitely noticeable how much faster it is than the 200 to 500, but not necessarily a difference between the 600 f4. You guys can kind of judge for yourself if that looks like it'll be fast enough for you. It certainly looks like it's going to be fast enough for me. Anyway, it's going to be great for wildlife. For me, I do a lot of hiking and photographing owls, photographing anything really, but I do like to get out and hike, and I do like to have smaller, lighter gear so I can go further and go faster and go more efficiently through the woods. So anyway, I hope this review is helping you with your decision on whether to buy one or not. That's kind of what I'm hoping to do with getting this video out to you guys quickly, because I was able to get one very quickly out of the gate, and I know a lot of people are going to be waiting for these, and you probably need to get your orders in soon to minimize that wait time. So I guess that'll be it for the images and the review. So just remember, this was one day of shooting with this lens, so I don't know it very well yet. I need to get to know it a little bit better. That VR thing has me a little bit worried, but I'm hopeful that I can just figure that out, what I'm doing wrong, and everything will be cool with that. Overall, I'm super stoked with the lens. It's smaller and lighter than I had hoped. Image quality is excellent. Autofocus is presumably very, very fast. And anyway, I hope this has been helpful. That's my intent. Try and help you guys, and I'll answer questions. Leave me questions or comments down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And that's about it. So I hope you have a great day. I'm going to go edit this video together and then go to bed because it's going to be late. So have a good one, and I will talk to you again soon.